Good morning. Welcome to Monday Musings from the Midwest. I'm Barry Collins, and what you're about to be exposed to is, well, my take on 5 topics: law, issues, cases I've seen, those kinds of things, governance and government, education, leadership, and finally, because all of those kind of tie into a lot of things, and I have children and grandchildren, even some parenting tips. What I hope from this channel is that it informs you, gives you something to think about, and perhaps even allows you to have a little bit of entertainment on Mondays or whatever day you choose to watch it. I will have to say that you don't know me. I'm a retired attorney with decades of experience. I also am a certified teacher and have taught in public schools and universities for years. So what I'm trying to do is bring that information to you. In my career, I worked a lot with government and governance issues, including working a lot with leadership and trying to make things better for everyone. So I'll bring that to bear to the table. And of course, I've already told you I was a parent. Now, as a retired attorney, I have to say 2 things up front. This channel is not designed to create any kind of attorney-client relationship. And what I'm telling you is really for education and information purposes and hopefully entertainment. The second thing is nothing should be construed as legal advice. You're not my client. I'm retired. I'm just providing information for you. So I said all that up front, and I hope that helps you to understand what's going on. With that, I will dive into the first of those topics, law topics. I'm amazed. When I was a kid, my grandmother got this kind of pulpy true crime magazine. I can't remember if it was called True Crime. It was kind of on cheap paper, and they sent things. And the first story I remember reading when I was 7 or 8 years old was about Bonnie and Clyde. And the pictures were in there, and it was graphic, it was horrible. I followed crime ever since. In fact, it's probably why I became an attorney. I have been following some cases, and I will tell you, I don't follow them for the sensationalism. I enjoy watching courtrooms and good attorneys and good practices. So that's my whole deal with watching true crime. There are a couple of cases, though, recently that have kind of touched a nerve ending in me because of some of the things that are being said on social media. The first one is the Alex Murdaugh trial out of South Carolina. Alex Murdaugh's family was a longtime scion of a low country South Carolina small town. The law firm was well respected. The law firm and this family kind of were the prosecutors for everything. So they'd been around a while. Well, Alec had a little problem with drugs. And because he had a little problem with drugs, he had a little problem with stealing. Lo and behold, however, though, his wife and his youngest son, Paul, his wife was Maggie, his youngest son, Paul, I think Paul was 22 years old, are killed one night. And Alex Murdaugh is convicted of the murder. This is not about whether Alex Murdaugh was guilty or innocent. What just happened in the last 3 weeks is that the South Carolina Supreme Court overturned Alex Murdaugh's conviction. They've sent it back for a new trial. And people are just incensed. We know he's a murderer, we know this and we know that. Well, I watched a great deal of that trial. I can't claim to have watched every minute of it, but I watched a great deal of that trial. The first thing I will tell you is I was very bothered by how much of this theft, his theft from clients, his bad money acts came in. Because when that happens in trial, the jury's going to think you're guilty. You're a bad man. You're guilty automatically, right? It's called prior bad acts. And I was concerned about how much of that was coming in. It seemed excessive. It seemed like a lot of the trial was caught up in people testifying about how Alex had stole this money from them. Well, You can be a drug addict and a slime ball and a thief, but that doesn't mean you're a murderer. And that's why courts try to limit that prior bad acts. The Supreme Court noted that, and when they sent the case back down, they gave some instructions on what to do with that prior bad act evidence. Watch for that as you watch true crimes, because, again, the whole point is, if I've done something wrong in my past, that doesn't mean I'm going to murder somebody. Just because I'm stealing money, it doesn't mean I'm going to murder somebody. That's why courts try to limit that prior bad act testimony. And I was concerned by it. I was glad to see the South Carolina Supreme Court noted it. But the second thing, and the reason I think it really got overturned, was that the clerk of court, and I'm not going to say her name, was telling the jurors things that might have, and I say might have, influenced the jurors. Now, before the South Carolina Supreme Court got this case, they had basically a special hearing where a master, a retired Supreme Court justice, actually sat as the finder of fact. And even though jurors were saying she said things that like, watch him, when Alex Murdaugh testifies, watch him closely, which gives the impetus that he's lying. That's kind of the implied consent. Or that when they went back in the jury room, she said, hey, this shouldn't take long. In other words, implying that everybody should know what's going on. That's what the Supreme Court sent it back down for. And they said those kind of comments should not happen. Think about it again. For some reason, you've been arrested for murder, and you didn't do it. Or you did. It doesn't really matter. You want the most fair trial you can get. You want people to be judging on what the prosecution presents in that courtroom, not on what some clerk is saying to them out in the hall where you can't control it. So I was glad, because of the couple of things I said, that the Murdaugh trial did get overturned. I thought there was plenty of evidence showing that he probably did it, and he'll get a new trial. We'll see what happens in the future. Another case that I watched, and I watched it with kind of concern, was the Corey Richins trial. And if you haven't seen anything about Corey Richins, she was a young mother with 3 young kids whose husband was making about $30,000 a month. But that wasn't enough for Corey. And her husband's estate was worth several $1 million, under 10 million, so it's not that much. Can you believe I'm saying that? She was recently convicted, and the evidence showed a propensity for her to have poisoned him with fentanyl. In fact, I think the evidence showed there was probably 20 times more fentanyl than it would take to kill a person. So it was a massive dose of fentanyl. What concerns me about that trial is the fact you're seeing it seems to be more and more of that kind of activity. My husband's angering me, I'm going to kill him. I'm not making enough money. Oh, he's worth this much, I'm going to kill him. The whole scenario really, really bothered me. And I think it was kind of a microcosm to me of society, in that we're ready to take the easy way out. Don't like you? Kill you. How about if you are upset with somebody, you get a divorce and you walk away? Young lady is now spending the rest of her life in prison. She also had financial crimes, and there was some about finance in it, but not a whole lot. There will be other crimes, and I'm going to talk about another crime in a minute, but anyway. Let's talk just a little bit about education. And perhaps this could be called parenting as well. I keep my hand in. I've been known to take on a classroom for a couple of weeks when a teacher's been sick. I still sub because I love the kids. And last year in the state I lived in, they passed a law that said students could not have cell phones bell to bell. In other words, from the first bell in the morning to the last bell in the evening, they could not have a cell phone. It had to be in their backpack. In fact, some schools had them check them in other places. It depended on the school what they did. There were exceptions. If you have a medical reason to have your phone, i.e. perhaps you're diabetic and your blood sugars are connected to the phone, that was okay. I mean, it was an interesting. I watched for the last year, and I watched those kids actually become more engaged in education. Now, that's anecdotal. I don't have any way of showing you that a kid is paying more attention. But my anecdotal observation was the kids were more respectful. They were more apt to actually do their work because the siren call of that phone wasn't calling them away. And they seemed to be less jittery, less jumpy, more focused on what was going on. Well, now we've hit summer. And I'm kind of concerned what's going to happen next year when those kids have had their phones all summer long and they've got to go back to school and be back to that bell-to-bell, no cell. I'm hearing this is happening in a lot of states, and I think it's a wonderful thing. Cell phones really did disturb education. So here are a couple parenting tips, education tips for the summer. First of all, give your kids a couple of weeks to sleep in and do whatever, but don't let that happen all summer. Keep them on a schedule. Get them up in the morning and get going. It'll make your life easier come August and September when you have to send them back to school. Number 2, limit their cell phone over the summer. Limit their cell phone over the summer. I understand your kids at baseball practice, you want him to have a cell phone. Make him keep it in the backpack. You don't want your child with his head down scrolling all the time. So go ahead. I think there are controls you can use to limit the time your kid has his cell phone. And finally, my big one, make them read something. A lot of cities and libraries have summer reading programs. Take advantage of them. Make them read a book. Talk to them about a book. It can be just one book for the summer, but make them read. Keep them engaged. Don't let them become slugs that are all caught up in electronics. Final one, give them some chores to do. Make them take out the trash. Make them dust. Make them sweep the floor. Give them something productive to do. It will really help you in the future. My final area I always want to talk about, and I talked about education and parenting together, I talked about legal issues, is management and leadership. And I'm going to lead with the one thing that I always tell people when they call me or when I go visit with them or whatever. You see a lot of managers sitting in their office. And I understand that you have a lot to do. But I really believe in management by walking around. MBWA. Get out of your office, even if it's just once an hour, and wander around, see what people are doing, say hi, check in with them. It doesn't mean you're micromanaging. It means you're going out and showing an interest in the projects they're doing. And I always have managers say, well, I don't know what to say to them. Walk in the door and say, how you doing? How are your kids? What are you working on? How's it going? It's a pretty simple concept. So again, I welcome you to the initial issue of Monday Musings from the Midwest. I'm Barrett Collins, which by the way is a pseudonym because I want to keep my privacy as well. I encourage you to hit like on this. I promise you some things. First of all, I'm going to keep this channel free. I'm not subscribing. I'm not in it for money. I'm in it to provide some thoughtful content for you to think about, enjoy, comment on. So if you get into the comments and you have something you'd like me to comment on, some legal concept you don't understand, some educational problem you've had, again, I'm not providing you individual advice, but I will use those comments to create future content. Also, I simply ask you to be respectful and kind in those comments. This is a place to share information. It's not a place to hit each other over the head for others' beliefs. Final thing I promise you, even though I worked in government for a long time, I'll try to stay out of politics. I don't really care if it's a Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, or Green Party. What I tend to comment on are things that interest me. I hope you enjoy this channel. Hit like if you do, and come back next week for more Monday Musings from the Midwest. I'm Barrett Collins. Goodbye.